During the Kangxi period, a strange thing happened in Yanguan City, Haining. A wealthy businessman from Luoyang was looking for his long-lost twin brothers. He said his name was Zhang Yukai and his brother's name was Zhang Yud. The sole of his left foot there is a black mole on the sole of his brother's right foot, and there is a small amount of down on the mole. He also said that when his mother was pregnant with them, the war was in chaos and she had to flee. Haining, they were unfortunately separated after giving birth to them in Yanguan. Now her mother is seriously ill and she misses her child who has been separated for many years even more. That's why Zhang Yukai came here to look for his biological brother. He wanted to find his biological brother and give him a fortune. Once the news spread out, the city of Yanguan was shocked. Anyone with a mole on their body went to recognize their relatives, even those with a mole on their buttocks and face. However, the person with a mole on the sole of his right foot never showed up. Zhang Yukai saw how enthusiastic everyone was, so he announced that as long as someone found his brother Zhang Yud for him, he would reward him with 100 taels of silver. More than half a month passed, and the mysterious Zhang Yud never showed up, but everyone's enthusiasm continued unabated. Every day, someone goes to the Qiantang where Zhang Yukai is staying to provide clues. There is a Sizitang Chinese medicine shop in the north of Yanguan City. Business is slow on weekdays. The owner, Chen Jubao, is alone and struggling to survive with this meager family fortune. One day, after closing, he was enjoying his feet in the room. After soaking in the water, he shouted to the waiter to pour hot water. The old waiter Wang went to play mahjong lazily, and a new boy named Wang Liupi was very smart. He quickly brought hot water in. After the water was ready, he said diligently, "Boss, I will cut your toenails." "Go ahead, Liupi." Chen Jubao squinted his eyes and nodded. He was cutting his toes. Wang Liupi suddenly exclaimed with great joy, "Shopkeeper, you are going to make a fortune. There is a black mole on the sole of your right foot. It turns out that you are Zhang Yud." Chen Yubao glared at Wang Liupi after hearing this. At a glance, they said that my ancestral graves are all in Yanguan City, and my family has lived in Yanguan for generations. Who would believe me if I go to recognize my relatives? Moreover, it seems that the windfall that came my way is not mine. Wang Liupi quickly said, "Oh, shopkeeper Chen, in today's world, if you see a bald man, he is a monk. As long as you demonstrate well, and after so many years, who can see that Chen Jubao was a little tempted by what he said, and the two of them made a full plan. One night, the next day they packed their bags and headed to Qiantang Inn. There, early in the morning, many people were already queuing up, waiting to recognize their relatives. When Chen Jubao saw the situation, he felt unsure, and thought he should go back quickly. Wang Lu Pai pulled him hard, and finally it was his turn. At this time, a man led Chen Jubao in, making many twists and turns, and finally came to a secluded room. Chen Jubao, thinking about the trick Wang Liupi taught him, went in after that. He said nothing and kept crying and wiping his tears. He sat on a chair. Someone came over and took off his shoes and footwear. He looked carefully. Then he felt a faint sound on the sole of his right foot. Heart-wrenching pain, Chen Jubao shouted, "What do you want to do?" The man bowed and said, "I'm sorry. There are too many fake people recently. We have no choice but to try to pull it out. It seems that your mole is real." Yes, after saying that, he clapped his hands inside. After a while, there was a rush of footsteps. When he opened the door, an energetic old man stepped in barefoot. He was Zhang Yukai. He held Chen in both hands. Jubao gently stroked Jubao's right foot, and then raised his left foot. There was a black mole of the same size on it. Zhang Yukai couldn't help but hug Chen Jubao, crying, "Oh, brother, finally I have found you. Over the years, I have made you feel wronged." Facing this situation, Chen Jubao couldn't help but feel really sad, and his tears fell down. "Dear brothers, let's meet each other. We are lining up outside." The people waiting were disappointed. After a while, everyone was gone. Chen Jubao stayed at the Qiantang Inn that night. The two brothers confided in their hearts. Zhang Yukai learned that Chen Jubao owned a Chinese medicine shop and had to go back to take care of business. He said, "Oh, it's such a happy event that brothers meet again today. Let's leave the drugstore to the clerk for the time being. We just drink and talk." Chen Jubao is just afraid that time will be exposed, but Zhang Yutsai's face is excited and full of enthusiasm. Looking suspicious, Chen Jubao had no choice but to stay. Zhang Yukai said again, "Brother, you have suffered a lot these years. As the eldest brother, I should take care of you. My mother has told me that once I find you, I will take you back to Luoyang immediately. See, it's just that my eldest brother is a businessman, and he still has a few old accounts to settle in Jiangsu and Zhejiang. Well, let's do this. You stay at the inn to help me keep accounts from tomorrow on, and I will double your reward. When this matter is settled, how about we go back to Luoyang together? After saying this, he immediately took out a silver ingot of 10 taels and stuffed it into Qin Jubao's hand. Qin Jubao also secretly thought to Xiao Jiujiu, he wants to earn dozens of taels of silver first. But if he really wants to go to Luoyang to recognize his relatives, then he can leave by himself and everything will be fine. From that day on, Qin Jubao would copy and organize various accounts for Zhang Yukai in a secluded room of Qiantangyan every day. He secretly marveled in his heart that this Zhang Youcai's business is really big. Zhang Yukai goes out early and comes back late every day. He looks very busy. Sometimes he goes out for several days before coming back. He looks through Qin Yubao's accounts every day, nodding while reading, showing a very satisfied look. After settling the old accounts, Zhang Yukai brought back a thick stack of account books. He also said that only when the accounts were done by himself can he rest assured. Zhang Yukai did not break his promise. In the past 10 days, he had given Qin Jubao nearly 100 yuan in succession. 2 taels of silver. Qin Jubao buried his head in settling the accounts, and was secretly happy. He had been running a traditional Chinese medicine shop for most of his life, and had only saved dozens of taels of silver. Now a big brother appeared and made so much money all at once. During this period, Qin Jubao once returned to his Sizitang Chinese medicine store to take a look. He found that the store door was actually closed, and after knocking on the door for a long time, Wang Liupi came out to open the door, and saw him waving his head and face, and emerged from nowhere. When he saw Qin Jubao, he burst into tears and said, "Oh, since the shopkeeper left, the business of my drugstore has plummeted." When the old man Wang saw that he could not get paid, he left with some more expensive medicinal materials. "I couldn't bear to leave, so I stayed and took care of you." After hearing this, Qin Jubao scolded Wang a few words, then hurriedly came to comfort him, took out some broken silver, and asked him to continue taking care of him. Qin Jubao returned to Qiantangyan. He continued to copy the accounts and clean up the account books. He calculated the time. This time, Zhang Yukai had been out for almost 5 days. Why didn't he come back? It didn't matter to him, as long as he made money. Dong, 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 suddenly there was a rapid knocking outside. There was a sound at the door. When he opened the door, Qin Jubao saw an angry face. The man still had a stack of bills in his hand. He asked accusingly, "You are Zhang Youcai's brother Zhang Yud, right?" Qin Jubao nodded and the man said, "I am. Shopkeeper of the Qiantang Inn, your eldest brother has spent all the money he kept in the cabinet. He often holds big banquets at our place, and also engages in family hunting, which makes people crazy. It's good now. He will never come back. No one can be seen. Brother, please pay off the debt." After saying this, he picked up the abacus and crackled it. The total was 158 taels and 6 coins. After hearing this, Qin Jubao felt dizzy and confused. In a daze, he felt something was wrong. When he got anxious, he showed his trump card. "Oh, I'm a fake. I'm not Zhang Youcai's brother." The shopkeeper said, "I don't care if you are genuine or fake. Ah, you were eating and drinking in our inn for free, and you stayed in our inn for so many days. I saw this with my own eyes." Qin Jubao still refused to pay the bill. The shopkeeper was so angry that he was sent to the county government office. The two of them in court. At that time, the newly appointed magistrate of Haining was named Chen Weiyang. He was famous for the Shanjue case. When he heard about such a bizarre case, he felt very strange. He asked the shopkeeper to explain it to Qin Jubao in detail, so that nothing could be missed. One detail, Chen Yin asked Qin Jubao after a long while, "You said he was a clerk in the drugstore who encouraged you to go and recognize your relatives. Who is he and when did he come to your store?" Qin Jubao said, The drugstore in our store was small and profitable, and there was only one old man at first. Then one day a young man named Wang Liupi came. He said that there was a flood in his hometown and he had nowhere to make a living. He just wanted to be able to give him a bowl of food and work. There was no need for wages. I thought he was quite smart, so I kept him. Now he is still looking after me in my pharmacy." Chen Weiyang said, "Is there a light gray birthmark on his left cheek?" Qin Jubao he couldn't help shouting, "Sir, how did you know this?" Chen Weiyang pondered for a long time and said that this matter may seem bizarre and funny on the surface, but in fact it is very likely to contain a sinister plot. "You must not argue now." Chen Jiubao will go to Qiantang as usual. The inn cleaned up the account books without showing the slightest panic. I, Chen, took care of his debts. The two of them swore an oath and resigned. That afternoon, Chen Weiyang dressed up in disguise, took 2 attendants, and gave a horse to the tall horse, carrying medicinal materials, pretending to be a pharmacist, came to the north of the city. Chen Weiyang walked around Sizitang Pharmacy several times. The horse's hooves made a loud echo on the stone road. Chen Weiyang turned sideways. Listening carefully, he stopped in front of the drugstore door and banged the door loudly. Finally, the door creaked open, and a man came out. He looked sleepy, and his clothes were stained with mud. Ban, the fabric on both knees was seriously damaged. Chen Weiyang asked him if he needed to buy goods. The man said impatiently that the shopkeeper was not here and he couldn't make the decision. He turned around and closed the door with a bang. Chen Weiyang nodded and pinched his fingers again. Calculating the time, he said that it would be 15 tomorrow night. The two followers could not figure out what kind of medicine he was selling in his gourd. Chen Weiyang returned to the county government office. At dusk the next day, he asked someone to sneak Chen Jiubao away. Then, he asked if you still want to meet your brother, Zhang Yukai. Chen Jiubao kept nodding. He still wanted to share the wealth of the family. Chen Weiyang sighed sadly, put on his casual clothes, and brought after hiring a few capable agents, the group headed to the north of the city and arrived at a pawn shop not far from Sizitang Pharmacy. As soon as the pawn shop owner saw Chen Weiyang, he immediately came out and said, "Oh my, your guest is really on time, after today. Late, that thing should belong to me." Chen Weiyang remained silent and came to the quiet room inside. He quietly took out a waist tag and handed it to the pawn shop owner. The pawn shop owner was surprised and said, "Hey, you are the new guy here." "Mr. Chen," Chen Weiyang said, "if my estimate is correct, the phantom thieves will come to steal that thing tonight. We will set up a trap in the basement where you hide the treasure, and wait for them to fall into the trap." The pawn shop owner was shocked and said, "Mr. Chen, you are swinging that treasure here just to attract the mysterious thief." Chen Weiyang nodded. The pawn shop owner immediately closed the door and closed the shop. Then he led the way with a lantern, and the group of people followed behind. They entered a dark passage and walked down the stone steps. The ground was getting lower and lower. A stone room appeared in front of them. The pawn shop owner took out the key and opened it. There were several oil lamps lit inside and the cabinets were piled high. It was filled with all kinds of boxes, big and small. Among them was a brocade box, which had a soft light. The pawn shop owner took out a small key and opened the brocade box. Everyone felt their eyes light up. Inside was a goose egg-sized. The luminous pearl emitted eclipsed the candlelight. Chen Jiubao couldn't help asking, "Mr. Chen, this place is so hidden, how did the thieves get in?" Chen Weiyang said, "They came in from your pharmacy, and your new assistant is the famous thief in the world, Zhang Yukai, is probably the master thief. They set up a scam and deliberately instigated you to recognize your relatives and leave the drugstore. This drugstore is connected to the pawn shop. They have already taken a good look at the terrain. When you clean up the accounts at the inn by that time, they had already dug a tunnel that led directly to here. Yesterday I went to the drugstore and saw the new clerk's sleepy eyes, indicating that he was resting during the day, which proved that the tunnel had been dug. My carriage was on the stone road. When walking, there is a sound that is different from other places. It must be the tunnel below. When the thief commits a crime, he usually chooses when the moon is full. There are still a few hours before the moon reaches the sky. Everyone has been promoted and destroyed." Deng Hua said and went over to cover a few boxes. After listening to Chen Weiyang's words, Chen Jiubao woke up as if from a dream. He couldn't help but slap the ground with his hands. Sure enough, there was a thumping echo from under one of the stone slabs. Chen Weiyang hurriedly put it to him. Pulling away, everyone lay in the darkness, and could clearly hear each other's breathing. I don't know how long it took, but footsteps gradually came from below. The footsteps became louder and louder, and everyone's heartbeats became faster and faster. Then there was a click, the stone slab was lifted up, and a figure came out. The policeman ambush on both sides jumped out and pressed him tightly. Chen Weiyang ordered to light the oil lamp, and the man shouted, "Chen Weiyang, why are you always haunting me? When I go to Hebei, you go to Hebei. When I come to Jiangnan, you come to Jiangnan. Fortunately, my junior brother runs fast. As long as he goes out, there is always a way to save me." Chen Weiyang haha smiling, he said, "Magic thief, I have already arranged for samurai at the tunnel entrance of the drugstore. I am afraid that the phantom thief is already waiting for you in the county prison. I used the night pearl to lure you. I never thought you could enter from underground. If it weren't for the innkeeper. I really can't figure out the trouble with Qin Jubao. Jubao, come over and see your brother. Qin Jubao stepped forward and asked me, but there is one thing I still don't know. Why do we have the same mole on the soles of our feet? Chen Weiyang went over and took it off. The thief's shoes are smooth on the sole of his left foot, and there are still shadows of moles there. Chen Weiyang said, the thief works as a waiter in your shop and washes your feet all the time. Don't they know the secret of the soles of your feet? Yes, with the ability of a master thief, it shouldn't be a problem to get a small mole on the sole of his foot. Qin Jubao shook his head and said, oh, it's all my fault that I let money blind my conscience, mistakenly identified my brother, and almost became theirs. Accomplices, this ill-gotten wealth cannot be taken away. This is really a wealthy businessman Haining who came to look for his relatives. He pretended to be brothers and defrauded gold and silver. The strange thief set up a trap. Be careful with ill-gotten gains.